Now it's time for week number 948 of Imagination Theater.
The Adventures of Harry Nile.
The Further Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
Raffles, the Gentleman Thief.
Kincaid, the Strange Seeker.
The Classic Adventures of Sherlock Holmes.
We present Carides the Thinker.
Powder River.
We present the Hilary Caine Mysteries.
Welcome to an hour of movies for your mind. I'm your producer, Jim French. Tonight, we have a rare treat in store for you because you're going to know who the killer is before the famous girl detective, Hilary Caine. Oh yes, she's back. Only this time you're going to be right with the murderer, from the planning of the crime to its execution, and the following battle of wits between the perpetrator and the sleuth, who claims she's had lunch with Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot. So turn down the lights, turn up your imagination, and settle back to listen to this special double-length Hilary Caine story by M.J. Eliot that he's titled A Multitude of Sins, starring Karen Heaven and Randy Hoffmeyer.
And how do you take your whiskey, Mr. Dean?
Splash of soda makes me feel like a gentleman.
I prefer mine neat. I wonder what that says about me.
I know what this says about you.
What?
Why would a publisher leave a book face downward like this?
And why would a man who's no doubt broken a few spines in his time care so much about a book?
I'd rather kill the best man who ever lived than spoil the worst book ever written.
Interesting philosophy. Your drink.
If I understand your plan correctly, Mr. Fenchurch, isn't that supposed to be poison?
Not poison, Felix. Drugged. And it isn't. Yet. Oh, you don't really imagine I'd want to murder you, do you?
I can imagine all sorts of things, sir.
I don't think you realize just how important you are to my plan. Oh, very well. I shall take this one. Satisfied?
A double for me, please.
Cautious fellow, aren't you, Phil?
Extremely. That's how you become a success in my line of work. So it's not a poisoning you're planning, then?
Something far more direct. The drug is just to slow him down. Here you are. Help yourself to soda. Do you have the keys?
This is the one for your door. The other key to your neighbour's flat I hold on to. Is that right?
Quite correct, Felix. Yes, this is perfect.
Not really. It looks like what it is, an impression of your original. I could make a better one, you know.
Oh, I don't want a better one. It has to look like an impression.
Won't he be suspicious?
Why should he? I tell him my neighbour will give him my spare key this evening. It'll be dark. He won't have long to examine it before... Well...
And I'm to be the neighbour?
Mr. Roy Trommeley. Nice fellow. Widower like myself.
I'm no actor, Fenchurch.
Oh, after hundreds of police interrogations and dozens of unsuccessful trials, I find that hard to believe.
So how did you get hold of Trommeley's key?
I fed his fish while he was on holiday last month. Took an impression of it then.
And how do you know he'll be out tomorrow night?
He tells me he'll be in Manchester watching his daughter make her stage debut.
They have theatres in Manchester.
Well, one at any rate. I want you to let yourself into his rooms at 7 o'clock. An hour or so later, Griffin will call on you to collect my key.
And I just have to give him the key. That's all I have to do.
That's all you have to do. Then you simply remain out of sight until I contact you.
And pay me the rest of my money.
Well, my authors work on the same basis. I like to see the results before opening my checkbook.
You know, you could just cosh him over the back of the head in an alley. Give me an extra £100 and I'll do it for you.
And I'd spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for the police to connect me to the crime. No. At the moment of his death, Hamilton Griffin will know I am his executioner. And I intend to kill him myself in front of a witness and walk away scot-free.
We present the Hilary Caine Mysteries starring Karen Heaven and Randy Hoffmeyer. The story for this issue, A Multitude of Sins. No, I'm afraid Castle Tree Publications does not accept manuscripts from unrepresented authors. Well, I recommend you acquire representation. No, I'm afraid we can't direct you to anyone. Good day.
Oh, Lord save us from budding authors.
Oh, Mr. Fenchurch. I don't think it was anyone Castletree would be interested in.
I have absolute faith in your judgment, Miss Pennywise, including your decision to join me for dinner this evening.
Your invitation was most unexpected, sir.
Ah, Reginald. But not unwelcome, I hope.
Oh, not at all, Sir Reginald.
I booked the table for 7 o'clock.
Mr. Fenchurch, you asked to see me?
Ah, indeed I did, Mr. Griffin. In my office, please.
Sir.
Miss Pennywise, I can rely on you to take care of that other matter?
Very good, Mr. Fenchurch.
A drink, Griffin.
It's a little early, sir.
Quite so. Quite so.
Mr. Fenchurch, if this is about the Isambard Kingdom Brunel biography, I've been speaking to the author, and he feels...
It's not about the Brunel book, Griffin. As a matter of fact, it's not about any book.
Sir?
I'm entrusting you with an important errand. I'm sure I can rely on you.
Of course.
Do you share my passion at all?
Excuse me?
Antiques.
Ah, not really, not at the moment. Perhaps when I'm a little...
Older? No offence taken, Griffin. As a matter of fact, your diffidence is to my advantage. You see, I have my heart set on a 16th century Maltese dagger. Unfortunately, once the dealers hear my name, the price shoots up.
Might I suggest using an assumed name?
Oh, an excellent suggestion. And, as a matter of fact, I've done just that.
And what name did you use?
Yours.
But
perhaps I'm taking something of a liberty, Griffin, but there's very little time to waste, and I knew I could rely on you. I can rely on you, can't I?
Of course. Rely on me for what, sir?
I'd like you to call at Mr. Levison Link's antique store on the Belgrave Road this evening after work and purchase the dagger for me.
Well, you see, Mr. Fenchurch...
The money, of course. This should be sufficient. I take it you're not planning on fleeing the country? Now, once you have the dagger, bring it to my building. You do know where I live?
Flat 2, Friars Mansions.
Quite correct. I had no idea I'd ever told you.
Some time ago, sir. I just remembered.
Splendid. Now, this is most important. I don't want my part in the transaction known.
Understood, Mr. Fenchurch.
I'm grateful for this, Hamilton. It means a good deal to me, so I know I can thoroughly rely on you.
It's my pleasure, sir.
You probably know, since my wife's death, I found it difficult to trust anyone.
I didn't know that, Mr. Fenchurch, no.
You see, I've always suspected she was seeing another man.
Another man?
Yes. The night she died, I think she was going to see him.
You think, but you're not certain.
Well, the taxi driver died in the crash too, so I never knew where he was taking her. But I suspected, of course. When I got back from Belgium, I even employed a private detective.
And what happened?
What I expected. In the end, he had nothing to report.
Oh.
Now, it's just possible I may be out when you get to Friars Mansions this evening. I have 1 or 2 errands to run. If that's the case, you call on my neighbour, Mr. Trommeley, in flat 1. He has a spare key. Just let yourself in.
Should I leave the dagger there and go?
No. I'd like to examine it in your presence. If the dealer tries to dupe you, you may have to take it back.
But surely at that hour...
He lives above the shop. I promise not to keep you waiting long, Hamilton. I'll leave some whiskey out, and by all means help yourself to a glass while you're waiting.
I won't let you down, sir.
I know you won't.
Who is it?
Mr. Tromley?
Yes.
My name is Griffin, Hamilton Griffin. I work for Reginald Fenchurch. He said you kept a spare key for his flat.
Just a moment. A key, you say?
That's right.
Reginald telephoned me, told me you'd be calling. Here you are.
Thank you, Mr. Tromley.
You're to let yourself in and wait. Have a drink. Keep out the chill.
Not far now. How are you feeling, Felicity?
A little cold, sir. Reginald.
Yes, perhaps we should have taken a taxi, but I thought the walk would sharpen our appetites.
Appetites? But we've just eaten.
No trestle, sir.
Oh, by no means.
Coppers to you, Ben.
A fancy loaf.
Mr. Fenchurch, I hope you understand. I'm not in the habit of accompanying men back to their flats. What my mother would say if she knew, I'm sure I don't know.
It's the 20th century, Felicity. There can't possibly be any shame in a professional young woman spending some time in her employer's room on a weekday evening.
No shame at all, sir, if it's purely on business.
Well, there's business and there's... Good Lord.
What's the matter?
That window up there. There's a light on. It's dim, but you can just make it out.
Well, what of it?
Well, that happens to be my room. And I know for a fact that when I left, all the lights were off. I have a burglar, Miss Pennywise. Come on, let's surprise the fellow in the act.
Shouldn't we call the police? There's a phone box over there.
By the time they turn up, he'll be long gone and half my possessions with him. No, I don't intend to let him get away. And I have just the weapon for dealing with his sort.
Mr. Fenchurch, you can't mean to shoot him.
Only if he proves dangerous. Now, come on. There's no time to waste.
I can't hear a thing, Mr. Fenchurch. Are you sure he's still in there?
We didn't pass anybody on our way in, I'm sure. Now, in a moment, I'm going to throw open the door. Just stand behind me and don't do anything foolish.
I think I'd rather be at home, sir.
Too late for that now. Stay where you are. I have a revolver. I'm warning you. What? Don't come any closer.
No, don't!
Got him. Serves the blighter right.
Did you kill him?
I didn't have any choice. You saw him coming at us. He was probably armed, too. I'll just check his pockets. You chose the wrong man to cross, Mr. Whoever you... Oh, my God, no.
What is it, Mr. Fenchurch?
This isn't some common burglar. This is Hamilton Griffin. And I've just shot him.
Don't worry, Mr. Fenchurch. The constable will take Miss Pennywise straight home. Now, you understand we'll have to take your fingerprints. It's purely so we'll know which items this Griffin fellow touched.
Oh, yes. Do what you must, Inspector.
And you say you've never seen this knife before?
Never.
Well, if we find Griffin's prints on it, we can say with certainty that he brought it with him to use as a weapon.
You don't think he was lying in wait to kill me, do you?
It's a little early to say for certain, but from what you and Miss Pennywise tell us, there's no indication of any enmity on his part. More likely, he was planning to rob you.
Incredible. I almost can't believe it.
We'll have to talk to a few people first, Mr. Fenchurch, but I think I can say you needn't fear any consequences.
Consequences? You mean... What do you mean?
Well, I mean that Mr. Griffin entered your rooms with felonious intent. He was armed and therefore willing to kill or injure in order to escape capture. You have a license for your revolver.
Oh, indeed I do.
Seems like a fairly clear-cut case of self-defense. Nothing for you to berate yourself for, nothing for the police to worry about, and certainly nothing to interest...
Might I come in?
If you must, Hilary. Mr. Reginald Fenchurch, allow me to introduce you to Miss Hilary Caine, detective in residence to...
A rather vulgar tabloid publication. Good evening, Miss Caine.
Well, good evening. Hot chestnut?
No, thank you.
That's probably quite wise. I must confess, the appeal has always eluded me.
A pleasure, Miss Caine.
So, Inspector, I imagine it's the usual. A man lay dead, the police baffled, in walks the young but exceptionally wise female sleuth, soon to be portrayed by Miss Margaret Lockwood in a talking motion picture.
No, Hilary.
Madeline Carroll, then? I always thought he was a little on the skinny side, but I can put a call in to Mr. Hitchcock in the morning.
I mean, the police aren't baffled, and there's no need for a female sleuth, thank you.
Oh?
Mr. Fenchurch here shot an intruder who turned out to be an employee, Hamilton Griffin.
Any witnesses, or are we just taking his word for it? Well, you'll forgive me, Mr. Fenchurch, but I'm hopelessly impolite.
Well, as a matter of fact, I was accompanied by my secretary, Miss Felicity Pennywise. We'd been out to dinner.
Fenchurch? Not the Fenchurch who's in charge of Castletree Books?
That's correct.
And your secretary is also your mistress? How terribly unoriginal.
The human heart, Miss Caine, is not necessarily a logical organ.
Did Mr. Griffin know you were going to be out this evening?
Well, I didn't say anything about it to him, but possibly he overheard me.
So you and Miss Pennywise came back here for some reason. You walked in on Mr. Griffin and shot him?
I saw a light on in my rooms. I knew I hadn't left it on.
And do you always carry a revolver?
Well, as you can see, I collect antiques. 2 years ago, I was attacked in the street on my way back from Gaylord's auction house. I've carried the gun ever since.
Oh, I see. Well, all that seems perfectly reasonable.
Wait for it.
Except, didn't you recognize that your intruder was also an employee before you shot him? You said there was a light on.
The desk lamp over there, Hilary, the main light, must be dead. See?
And the desk lamp is too dim to make out a person's features at a distance. You did try the main light when you entered the room, Mr. Fenchurch?
Well, there really wasn't time, and I was worried for Felicity's safety.
But not so much that you had her wait outside.
Well, perhaps even at this late stage in my life, I am still guilty of wishing to impress a young lady with a display of foolish bravado.
May I just take a look about the place, examine the body?
Mr. Fenchurch, do you mind?
No, I don't suppose there's any harm.
No, I'd say the harm's already been done.
Hilary, there really is no doubt. What are you doing?
Do you know there's a knife on this desk?
Don't touch it, please.
I wouldn't dream of it. Do carry on, Inspector.
There really is no doubt that Griffin broke in here.
Really? I don't remember noticing that the lock had been tampered with. I mean, I only glanced at it, but still.
He was carrying this. A duplicate key, obviously taken from a mold.
Obviously. And no fingerprints on it other than Griffin's?
Well, that has yet to be determined. But I'll be very surprised if it doesn't prove to be the case. And Griffin came armed, apparently, with that knife.
I see. May I ask how long it was from the time you saw the light from the street to the time you entered the room?
Well, 3 or 4 minutes, perhaps. No more than 5. Why?
It just seems peculiar that in the 3 or 4 minutes Mr. Griffin didn't fill his pockets with any of the valuables I see around me. Spoiled for choice, perhaps.
Perhaps, yes.
Then again, a couple of pocketfuls wouldn't seem like much of a haul. Well, why didn't he bring a sack of some sort with him? Then he could have carted off a good deal of stuff away with him.
Oh, probably he intended to use a pillowcase. Most professional thieves do, Hilary.
Oh, and has anyone checked the bedroom?
I did. No signs of disturbance. Probably hadn't gotten around to it.
Even with 3 or 4 minutes to spare. Well, that really is all now, I think. Mr. Fenchurch, I am so sorry to have troubled you.
Not at all, Miss Caine. Meeting you has been an unusual experience, and tonight of all nights, that's saying something. You see, I've always imagined you were a fictional character.
Well, who isn't these days? And I'm far more successful as a detective in print than in reality. Mr. Fenchurch, I know this is hardly the time, but I'm thinking of getting a cleaning lady, and I noticed you have 2.
1, Miss Caine.
Really?
Why on earth would he have 2 cleaning ladies?
Well, you see, that's just what I was wondering. It just seemed as though he must have 2, one thorough and one quite careless. It just goes to show how misleading so-called logical deduction can be.
Logical deduction? I'm afraid I don't...
You see, the bulb in the main light, the one that doesn't work, well, it's perfectly clean, which suggests to me that you have a very thorough cleaner.
I see. And the careless one?
Well, the bulb in the desk lamp, which does work. Well, it's really quite dusty. But you say you only have the one cleaner?
Just the one, yes.
Well, it seems as though one bulb has received some attention quite recently and not the other. Strange.
I am unable to explain it. I suppose I must have a word with my cleaner.
Oh, well, probably not important. Just goes to show what I was saying. Good evening to you, Mr. Fenchurch.
Not bad at all.
Curious sport. Golf.
Ah, Miss Caine. Hello again.
Yes, I take it you were about to walk after it now? Whereas if I'd whacked something that far away, chances are I wouldn't want it back. May I join you, Mr. Fenchurch?
If you must.
Isn't it common to play against someone, or am I thinking of a different game?
I like to come out here alone and hit a few balls when I'm troubled.
Well, judging by the distance that ball went, I say you've been troubled quite a bit, Mr. Fenchurch.
Trouble, yes. But grateful at least that Inspector Finn has enough faith in me not to have me spend the night in a jail cell.
A break from work must be quite welcome after everything that happened last night.
Just because I'm not at work doesn't mean I'm not working, Miss Caine. I have a dictation machine in my flat and another in my office. Miss Pennywise can type up any letters I need to send.
No, I'm afraid Miss Pennywise decided to stay at home today. She's rather disturbed by this whole business.
Miss Caine, I have no desire to be impolite, but I'd really rather talk with Inspector Finn.
Of course. I'll find out which hospital ward he's on.
I beg your pardon? Hospital ward?
Yes. It's a funny story, actually. Actually, now I come to think of it, it isn't funny at all.
Why is he in hospital?
Well, as they were driving back from your flat yesterday evening, Sergeant Talmadge lost control of their automobile and it ran off the road. Neither one was seriously hurt, thank goodness, but for the time being, the inspector is off the case. But I promised him I'd take care of things while he was incapacitated. I think he was pleased.
How peculiar.
Not really.
Beg your pardon. Ah, here it is.
It's just that I started thinking about those light bulbs.
Again?
Yes, again. You see, it occurred to me that the entire incident might have been, well, stage managed. Weren't you supposed to hit the ball then?
Stage managed?
Say young Mr. Griffin was provided with a false key and tricked into entering your flat.
How, precisely?
Well, I'm not really sure. It's only a notion, you understand? Much better. You remember my flawed deduction concerning your cleaners, one thorough, the other sloppy? Well, what if the reason the bulb in your main light wasn't dusty was because it had been removed and replaced with a dud?
Why, for heaven's sake?
To ensure that your rooms were only partially lit, so you couldn't have claimed to recognize Hamilton Griffin.
I didn't recognize him.
Quite. I didn't really think about it at the time. Well, perhaps just a little bit, but I quickly disregarded it because Griffin would certainly have identified himself when you came in. But he didn't.
He did not. Ask Miss Pennywise if you don't believe me.
Oh, well, why on earth would I doubt you, Mr. Fenchurch? But ask yourself, why didn't he react before you shot him?
Why?
I'd suggest because he was drugged.
By the same person who gave him the key, no doubt.
So I imagined, until the inspector's little accident. You see, the sergeant does all the driving, and it occurred to me that he might have helped himself to a nip of your whiskey last night while no one else was looking.
You're suggesting someone drugged my whiskey? Impossible, surely.
If someone was able to make a copy of your key, it's entirely possible they could have entered your flat.
I suppose. Have you asked Sergeant Talmadge whether he drank my whiskey?
I did. He emphatically denies it.
Another flawed theory.
No, not really. You see, the sergeant and I have a rather fractious relationship. Naturally, he'd deny it. With the benefit of hindsight, I should have had Finn ask him, but the inspector had other things on his mind at the time. Oh, is that your ball?
Oh, yeah, it is. Well then, seems to me, Miss Caine, that the only way to be certain is to have the whiskey examined. In fact, I insist.
I'm not sure there'll be any point now. Chances are the drugged whiskey has been poured away and replaced.
You suggesting that the same person entered my room twice without my noticing? You'll forgive me. But that seems unnecessarily complicated.
Oh, I'm sure there's a simpler explanation.
Miss Pennywise, if you're not up to working today...
Oh, I'll be quite all right, Reginald.
Mr. Fenchurch, until this terrible business is cleared up to everyone's satisfaction, I think we'd better keep our feelings for one another secret. You understand?
Oh, of course, Mr. Fenchurch.
I shall be in my office for the remainder of the morning. I prefer not to be disturbed.
Very good, sir.
What is it?
Not a very polite way of responding, Mr. Dean.
Oh, it's you. I've read the papers. Congratulations, you got away with murder.
As I told you I would.
I lived up to my part of the arrangement. Now I'd like my money.
And I'm a man of my word, Felix. Take a table at the Gallant Endeavour on the King's Road at noon today, and I'll have to go. Who's there?
Oh, my goodness.
You again?
Oh, do forgive me, Mr. Fenchurch. Oh, I've had rather a busy couple of days, and when I called at your office and found you were out, well, this couch seemed so inviting. It's extremely well sprung, incidentally. I wonder your authors don't all fall asleep on it.
How were you able to get past my secretary?
Secretary? Oh, yes, that would have been who I heard crying in the ladies' room as I came in.
Very likely. What was it you wanted to see me about, Miss Caine? I also have a very busy day ahead of me.
Well, I really just came to apologize.
Apologize?
When I made such offhanded remarks about the inspector's accident, I had no idea about your poor wife.
Think nothing of it.
Yes, you're very kind to say so. Well, I suppose I shall be off. No rest for the wicked.
I wish you better luck with whatever case you're looking into now, Miss Caine.
Oh, I'm still investigating your case, Mr. Fenchurch. I just can't shake the notion that the whole incident was arranged to ensure that you killed Hamilton Griffin after mistaking him for an intruder.
As you no doubt know, Castletree would never dream of publishing mystery novels.
They are a rather childish form of entertainment, aren't they?
But even without a great experience of the genre, it seems to me that there's no real evidence to support your theory.
None at all, I agree. I'm just hoping there might be something in what Mr. Stoker told me.
And who is Mr. Stoker?
A hot chestnut seller. He set up his stall opposite your building on the night of the murder.
Shooting?
The night of the shooting, yes, do forgive me. He's very observant, even with his one eye.
And just what did he observe with his one eye?
An unusually shabbily dressed man entering Friar's mansion at around 6 o'clock. He was struck by the fellow's appearance, not at all the sort of tenant he could have pictured living there. An hour or so later, a young man who could have only been Mr. Griffin arrived rather publicly for someone with burglary on their mind.
Well, probably he wasn't expecting anyone to be taking notice of him.
I dare say. Well, a few minutes after Mr. Hamilton Griffin came, the other man left. Odd, wouldn't you say?
A coincidence, surely.
Surely. And yet, I don't know. There seems to be something very singular about the fellow. Mr. Stoker said he was about 5'4" in height, hairless, and had an Irish accent.
And he knows about the accent because?
Because the man refused the offer of a bag of hot chestnuts. It was rather a slow night for Mr. Stoker. I was his only customer. Does the description match anyone who lives in Friar's Mansion, Mr. Fenchurch?
I don't believe so, no. Perhaps he was visiting someone.
No, not according to any of your neighbours.
You have been busy.
I did say so. I wonder if he might have been there simply to hand the duplicate key to Mr. Griffin, the one Griffin used to enter your rooms. It turns out there were 2 sets of fingerprints on the key.
Hamilton was a man of many talents, Miss Caine. but I very much doubt that key-cutting was among them. Doubtless the key was made by some ne'er-do-well of his acquaintance.
Doubtless. And doubtless the police can identify him from his fingerprint.
Yes, they probably could.
Well, if it weren't a rather poor example of a print, what I believe the backroom boys call a partial.
Oh, that is a shame. But you did say that this mysterious Irishman arrived an hour or so before Griffin. If none of my neighbours saw him, where was he all that time?
I've really no idea. Maddening, isn't it?
Miss Caine, I really think you're placing too much importance on an incident which, in all likelihood, has an entirely straightforward explanation.
Just as there's probably a straightforward explanation for Hamilton Griffin's peculiar behaviour.
Go on.
You see, it seems that Mr. Griffin had arranged an assignation that evening with a married woman.
Married woman?
Yes, and I have to ask myself, having gone to the trouble of making such an arrangement, why would he then break into your home that very night?
As I told you at the time, Griffin must have overheard I'd be out at the same time and decided to take the opportunity to rob his employer.
But failed to contact his lady friend to inform her that he wouldn't be keeping his appointment?
I imagine he wouldn't have batted an eyelid at committing a social faux pas. It seems Hamilton Griffin was capable of anything, from gross ingratitude to robbery, possibly even murder.
Ah, you mean the knife. But it was on your desk, some distance from the body. Why would he put it down if he intended to use it as a weapon?
Well, perhaps he wasn't expecting me back so early.
Then why did he bring the knife at all? Either way, it doesn't make much sense.
I don't pretend to understand the criminal mind, Miss Caine.
Curious decision, though, wouldn't you say?
What decision?
To pick a knife as a weapon.
Well, not really. A knife is silent, easy to carry, to dispose of.
But Mr. Griffin knew you carried a gun, didn't he?
Well, I suppose so.
So, why would he think he'd stand a chance against you with just a knife?
That is a good question.
Isn't it? Yes, and I have another one. Why didn't he use his own gun?
His own gun?
Why, yes. Didn't you know he had his own gun?
No. No, I didn't know that.
No, I didn't think you did. Yes, you see, it belonged to his father. I had a look at it. It's still in working order. But it is an interesting question, isn't it? Gun against knife is hardly a fair fight. But gun against gun...
I think I can see a flaw in your reasoning, Miss Caine.
Oh, do tell.
Guns and bullets discharged from those guns are traceable. Knives, lesser.
Most knives. Yes, but this was an antique, and a quick glance at Griffin's home showed me that he was not a collector. So why did he have that one item?
Well, how could I possibly know the answer to that?
You did recognize the dagger? As an antique, I mean?
Maltese. Attractive enough its own way, but not the sort of thing that would interest the true connoisseur.
Well, I'll take your word for it, though it hardly seems to matter. I imagine that once Inspector Finn is up on his feet again, he should be able to locate the cellar. Then who knows what he might find out. Good day to you, Mr. Fenchurch.
Miss Caine, just one more thing. Well, a thought occurs to me. Not at all a pleasant thought.
Yes, go on.
Well, is it possible that all this is all some terrible misunderstanding?
Misunderstanding? I don't understand.
Well, say that perhaps Griffin was in my flat to, in order to surprise me with a gift.
Of the dagger?
Yes. Well, you said it yourself. I'm the collector, and when I entered the flat, saw what I imagined to be an intruder. Oh, God. Oh, God, please. Please say it isn't true.
It isn't true.
Eh?
It hardly seems likely that Mr. Griffin would actually break into your home just to give you a present. And then, of course, there's the question of the light bulbs and the drugged whiskey and the other set of fingerprints on the key. Well, I'm sure there's a logical explanation for all of them. I had hoped my little nap might have helped. Never mind, I'm sure something will occur to me.
So what was the problem earlier?
Problem, Felix? No problem.
When we spoke on the telephone, I got the impression something was bothering you.
Oh, just a minor annoyance. Nothing for you. Damn it!
What?
It's her. Again!
Oh, Mr. Fenchurch, what a delightful surprise bumping into you here. Mind if I join you?
Oh, but of course. Take a seat, Miss Caine.
Won't you introduce me to your friend?
This is Mr. Caine, one of my authors.
Mr. Caine. Might I have read anything of yours?
He's a first-time author.
Oh, really? Well, the best of British luck to you. We haven't met before, have we?
I don't think so, no.
It's just that you seem terribly familiar somehow. Yes, it'll come to me, probably.
I've never noticed you at the Glant Endeavour before, Miss Caine.
Oh, I come here all the time. See the way the staff ignore me when I wave at them? Yes, it's a little joke we have.
Making any progress in your investigation?
Unfortunately, it seems like every fresh development just raises more questions.
Such as?
Well, Mr. Levinson Link, the antique dealer. You've heard of him, I assume.
Now, why do you assume that?
Well, I imagine such a keen collector would know all the dealers in London.
Quite correct. And while I've heard of the fellow, I've never visited his store. What about him?
Well, it turns out that he was the one who sold the dagger to Hamilton Griffin.
Oh, how frustrating for you. To have confirmed what I've been telling you all along.
Mr. Link negotiated with Griffin on the telephone. But when he saw him in person, he was surprised. He expected a much older man.
People often sound different on the telephone, I've found.
Yes, I've noticed that too. Mr. Dean, have you noticed that?
Yes, I've noticed that.
You see, we've all noticed it, so there's nothing more to be said, is there?
Never mind, Miss Caine. I'm sure you can find other cases to expend your energies upon.
Oh, yes, I'm sure I could. The problem presented to me by your neighbour, Mr. Tromley, for instance.
A fuss? About what?
His books. You see, he was away on the night of the murder, staying with his daughter in Manchester. He's a widower, you know, like yourself.
Yes, I know. Do go on.
Well, before he left, he was in the middle of reading a book, left it lying on the side table. Now you, as a publisher, I'm sure, hearing about such mistreatment, must find this to be very upsetting.
I believe I can restrain my indignation.
But when he returned home, Mr. Tromley found the book closed and back on the shelf. As a matter of fact, the rest of his books had been placed in alphabetical order.
Really?
Nothing was taken, which makes the mystery even more...
mysterious?
Precisely. Evidently, someone entered Mr. Tromley's flat, probably with another duplicate key, but for whatever reason, I can't imagine.
Quite a puzzle. But with no real crime, I don't know why you're interesting yourself with the matter.
Yes, you make a good point, Mr. Fenchurch. After all, Mr. Stoker, the hot chestnut seller, can probably provide the police with a description of the man he saw that night. And if the intruder is a known criminal, it shouldn't be too difficult to identify him from his fingerprints. Something occurs to me. Suppose the fingerprints on the books should turn out to match the partial ones on Hamilton Griffin's key. Why, that could only mean...
What?
I don't know. Oh, it's all so terribly frustrating when these ideas pop into one's head only half-formed. Yes, I shall have to give it some more thought. And since I think better on an empty stomach, I'd better be pushing off. If I might offer you some advice, Mr. Caine? Stay away from murder.
Murder?
Mr. Fenchurch won't touch mystery stories. Enjoy your lunch, gentlemen.
You bloody fool.
Did she call me Caine before or Dean?
Weren't you listening?
Weren't you?
Go.
What about my money?
Just go. It's not safe to talk here. I'll call you later. A busybody. I don't want you to worry about her, Felix.
I do worry about her. She knows a damn sight too much about this business.
She only thinks she does. Where there's no evidence, there's no case.
What about my fingerprints?
Keep a clear head, old chap. Caine can't prove a connection between your presence in Tromley's room and Griffin's death. All you have to do is disappear for a while. And you know how to do that, I trust.
What about my money?
It'll be waiting for you upon your return. Make it 6 months at least. Oh, a year for preference.
Money first.
You should be thankful I'm paying you at all. Your own damn foolish.
Money first, or I go to the police.
And be hanged as my accomplice. Talk sense, man.
Not if I make a deal with them. All I know in exchange for a spell in prison. It's practically my second home after all these years.
All right. Let me think. Do you know a cafe in Mayfair called...
At your home.
Out of the question. You were already seen going in there last time.
Your home or the police station, Fenchurch?
As you insist. 9 o'clock tonight.
I made sure I wasn't followed, if that's what you were about to say.
As a matter of fact, I was about to say, come in. But I'm relieved to hear that. Come in.
You have my money.
Oh, why so serious, Felix? I admit I was a little cross earlier, but the past is the past. Share a drink with me.
No offence, Fenchurch, but I'm not sure I trust you.
Oh, dear. We back to that again. Look. 2 glasses of whiskey, you see? Take which one you want.
Thanks. You drink first.
Satisfied?
Satisfied. It's not as if you'd kill me anyway.
Your confidence in me is most encouraging.
There's no way you could get my body out of here.
Oh, you know where the soda is?
What about this detective then, this Caine woman?
Oh, she's merely an annoyance, like a fly buzzing round your head on a hot day. Cheers.
Cheers. I wish I shared your confidence, Fenchurch. She's on to you. She knows Griffin's death was a murder.
Oh, we all know it, Felix. But she's the only one who imagines she can do anything about it. And she's quite wrong, of course. Sooner or later, she'll see there's no new leads to pursue. Drop the investigation in favor of something more promising. I really thought that as a professional criminal, you'd be made of stronger stuff.
Call me a realist.
I prefer to think of you as a liability.
What was that?
I said you've become a liability, Felix. And that's why I'm afraid you'll have to go. If you want to be a success in business, you have to be ruthless.
Drugged?
Oh, no, not drugged, Felix. Poisoned. It was in the soda water. Here, let me take your glass. Incidentally, I shall be able to dispose of your body. You see, I have a dumbwaiter that goes all the way down to the kitchens. And since the staff won't be there at this time of night, it should be the easiest thing in the world to place your body in here. Lower it.
Oh, thank heavens for that. It's really quite cramped in here.
Miss Caine.
Oh, help me out, would you? There's a good fellow. Oh, my back. Oh, it's quite incredible, the things that seemed like such a good idea at the time. Speaking of good ideas, the poison in the soda water was very neat. Except, of course, it wasn't neat, was it? It was diluted by soda water. Yes, I'm rambling. Do forgive me. You can get up now, Mr. Dean.
I think I'm getting better at this acting lark.
Oh, I'm so sorry you won't get the opportunity to practice your craft in prison.
Don't worry about that, miss. I've spent more years inside than out.
He's not dead?
Oh, I learn from my mistakes, Mr. Fenchurch. Yes, you replaced the whiskey, I replaced the soda. Mr. Dean is quite unharmed.
Some kind of trap?
Like the one you set for young Mr. Griffin. I believe that's for you. Would you mind? Mr. Dean, I believe Mr. Fenchurch is somewhat dazed. Would you mind?
Of course, Miss Caine.
Good evening.
Oh, Inspector Finn, how good to see you up and about again, even if it is with the aid of crutches. Yes, do come in.
So, Hilary, what have I missed while I was away?
Just Mr. Fenchurch here confessing to the murder of Hamilton Griffin and the attempted murder of Felix Dean. You two have met, I believe?
We have.
What the hell is happening here?
Miss Caine suggested to me that you might not keep our bargain, Mr. Fenchurch. She said the police might be willing to reduce my sentence in return for my testimony against you. And I'm happy to give it now.
I'll get my notebook out.
And you honestly believe a jury would take the word of a known criminal against a respected publisher? I hardly think so.
Yes, there's always my testimony.
Which means it's your word against mine, Miss Caine.
Not just my word, Mr. Fenchurch. Your own also. I remember you telling me about your dictaphone machine here. Clever little device. Yes, so I took the opportunity of setting it running. I'm sure that when Finn checks the cylinder, he'll find your confession.
And I suppose it'll be admissible in court, since Mr. Dean knew the recording was being made.
Could be a legal landmark.
Mr. Fenchurch, do you have anything to say?
Nothing in the nature of an apology, Inspector. No expression of regret. Griffin betrayed me, humiliated me. He needed killing. Miss Caine.
Yes, Mr. Fenchurch?
It seems I was mistaken.
About what?
We should have published mystery novels after all. If I'd read enough of them, perhaps you wouldn't have caught me.
You have just heard A Multitude of Sins, a Hilary Caine mystery written by M.J. Eliot, produced by Jim French and directed by Randy Hoffmeyer. Karen Heavens stars as Hilary Caine, with Randy Hoffmeyer as Inspector Finn. Also in the cast were Rachel Glass as Felicity Pennywise, David Natali as Felix Dean, John Dewar as Hamilton Griffin, and Lawrence Albert as Reginald Fenchurch. Other parts were played by members of the cast. This series, The Hilary Caine Mysteries, was created by M.J. Eliot and is a copyrighted feature of Jim French Productions, all rights reserved. This is Rachel Glass speaking.
And that's Imagination Theater for tonight. Next week, Harry Nile and Murphy take the stage in the first of a two-parter called The Hardest Working Corpse in Show Business. Now, this is Jim French saying good night, and thanks for listening. Imagination Theater is produced and distributed by Jim French Productions, Incorporated, Seattle, Washington, USA.